Welcome back. Let's begin our Etl exploration with data pipeline, and more exactly with the steps that will facilitate your daily work as a data engineer. At the beginning of every Etl pipeline is the data source used to extract the data and make it available for the transformation. But sometimes your data source will be generated by other Etl pipelines. In such a case, you must ensure that the data you want to process is already available. If it's not the case, you can either fail the execution or simply automatically retry it later. Also, at this moment, you might ensure not only that the data is there, but also make some functional checks, like verify whether the volumes of the data aren't much lower than previously, or whether your system, whether you have the data coming from all systems, all sources. For instance, if you are working with IoT system and you know that your data is always generated by 5 types of devices, you may expect to have in your source the data corresponding to these 5 types. After this first step, we will retrieve the data processing logic that will take the input data, process it, and save into a staging area. This step may be present in the pipelines many times. So for instance, you can read the input data, process it first time, save into the first staging area, load it again, process, and store to the final staging area. It's not the rule, but if your data logic is complex, maybe it's worth dividing it into some smaller and easier to control steps. Once the data is written to any staging area, you will likely want to verify the quality of this data. Exactly like for the input data, processed data can be more or less correct. Let's take an example. If you are processing orders from your e-commerce store, at the end you want to have a denormalized row with order information and customer details. But unfortunately you have a bug and all customer details are empty. If you are expecting it to be always defined, you may add an extra quality check before pushing this data into this final destination. In the case when the quality threshold is very low, you can simply fail the whole pipeline. And thanks to that, any of your end user will see the corrupted and poor quality data. Of course, the last step of this operation is to put the data from the last staging area to your clients. And I will show you that, and I will try to schematize these steps with more specific examples. So let's say that we are using some data source, like it can be a relational database. So at the very beginning we are loading this data, but only if the data is here. So we can, for instance, let's check this, let's call this load if exists, because the loading is conditioned by the data presence. We will not run the pipeline when there is no data, because we will maybe expose other pipelines to work with empty or partially valid, partially defined data. So after that, we have our processing logic, which can be anything. We can do some mapping, we can do some enrichment, we can do some filtering, and so forth. And at this stage, we writing this data into some staging area. After that, let's do this that way. We apply some data quality checks. So we will need to check quality of this data, and as I said, it can be anything. You can make a sample count, you can make some aggregates to check the data per client, per provider, whatever you want. And after that, when the quality is okay, we will load this data into another destination that will be exposed directly to our end users or to other data pipelines. Of course, if your data quality check fails, you will stop the whole pipeline, send an alert to your team that will investigate the quality issues and check whether there are really data quality issues, because maybe you defined too aggressive threshold, and most of the time this threshold is reached, but your data is still valid. So it's up to you to make the decision about the error. And globally, thanks to this pipeline, you can be aware of any things going wrong, and you will not expose the data to your end users and other consumers of your dataset. So that's all. I bet that you remarked that I was talking a lot about staging area. If you met this term for the first time in this lesson, no worries, because I will develop it in the next lesson. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next lesson.